The message appeared in my personal queue during breakfast, and I nearly choked on my coffee reading it. Princess Seraphine, who I'd been working with for 6 months on comparative social customs research, was inviting me to her family's estate on Valkyr Prime for the Harvest Ascension celebration. Me, a human anthropologist whose most significant achievement was once correctly using 7 different formal greetings in a single conversation, without accidentally insulting anyone. I read the invitation 3 times, searching for signs I'd misunderstood. But no, it was clear. She wanted me to attend as her guest, to experience Valkoran tradition firsthand, to meet her family. The professional opportunity alone was staggering. The personal honor was something I didn't quite know how to process. I sent back an acceptance before my better judgment could intervene, adding what I hoped was an appropriately grateful message that didn't sound too desperately excited. Her response came within an hour: simple pleasure at my acceptance, followed by a data packet containing cultural briefings, etiquette protocols, and formal attire specifications. The briefings were thorough, obsessively thorough, actually. Proper greeting gestures for 12 different relationship categories, appropriate topics of conversation, forbidden topics of conversation, how to hold a glass, how to refuse food politely, historical context for 17 different ceremonial elements. I appreciated the preparation, but wondered if she thought I was particularly dense, or if Valkoran social customs were genuinely this complex. Over the next 2 weeks, she sent follow-up materials almost daily, updates to the guest list, clarifications on ceremonial timing, reminders about specific protocols. Each message was helpful and appreciated, but there was something almost anxious in the frequency. I attributed it to her wanting everything to go smoothly, wanting me to make a good impression on her family. It was sweet, really, how much she cared about my comfort. The day before departure, we met for our usual research session at the Harmony Point Archives. Seraphine looked tired, her luminous skin slightly dimmer than normal, her characteristically perfect posture just barely slouched. I asked if she was feeling all right. "Simply busy with preparation," she said, smiling in that way that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I want to ensure everything is perfect for your visit." "I'm sure it will be. I promise not to embarrass you too badly. I've memorized all 17 ceremonial elements. 18, actually. I sent an update yesterday." "Right, 18. No problem. I was definitely going to embarrass her." On the transport down to Valkyr Prime, she sat beside me watching the planet grow larger through the viewport. I tried making conversation about the landscape, the architecture visible from orbit, but her responses were distracted. Her ears, those elegant pointed ears I'd learned to read as easily as human facial expressions, angled backward, a sign of stress or worry. "Seraphine, are you sure everything's okay? If this is too much trouble, if your family would prefer." "No." She turned to me quickly and her hand found mine with surprising urgency. "I want you there, truly, She paused, seemed to reconsider her words. "I want you to remember that you can leave. At any time. If you feel uncomfortable, if anything seems wrong, please tell me immediately." It was an odd thing to say, but I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I trust you. It's going to be fine." Her expression suggested she wished she could believe that. The estate stole my breath. Buildings that seemed grown from living crystal, gardens where plants shifted colors in response to proximity, water features that defied gravity in ways that made my head hurt. Seraphine's family waited in the formal receiving courtyard, arranged in careful hierarchy that my briefings had prepared me for, but hadn't quite captured the intimidating reality of. The Duke, her father, greeted me with precisely calibrated courtesy. Not warm, not cold, exactly the formal politeness due to a guest of uncertain status. Her mother was warmer, genuine kindness in her eyes as she welcomed me. But her younger brother, Taloran, watched me with barely disguised contempt, his jaw tight as he performed the minimum required greeting gestures. "A human," he said to no one in particular. How progressive. Taloran. Seraphine's voice carried warning. I'm simply observing, sister. Father invited all manner of guests this year. Why not include every novelty available? I smiled like I hadn't noticed the insult. I'm honored by the invitation. Your home is extraordinary. Other nobles arrived throughout the afternoon, a carefully curated collection of allies, rivals, and political necessities. I noticed how they looked at me, not with curiosity but with calculation. Whispered conversations paused when I passed. Eyes tracked my movements with uncomfortable intensity. This wasn't normal xenophobia. This felt specific. The formal dinner was a masterclass in subtle hostility. I'd been seated in a position of moderate honor, close enough to the family to be acknowledged, far enough to mark my outsider status. The nobleman to my left ignored me completely. The court advisor across the table made pointed conversation about human expansion into traditionally Valkoran territories, and the concerning pattern of cultural contamination. Fascinating perspective, I said carefully. Though I'd argue cultural exchange benefits all parties when approached respectfully. Does your government share that view? The advisor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Recent incidents suggest otherwise. What incidents? I looked to Seraphine for clarification, but she was suddenly very focused on her plate. The territorial violation last month, the damaged ships, Valkoran casualties. The advisor spoke like I should know this, like I was feigning ignorance. Surely your people briefed you before sending you here. I wasn't sent, I was invited, as a researcher, not a representative. How convenient to claim academic neutrality while gathering intelligence. Advisor Kelmer, please. Seraphine's mother intervened gently. This is a celebration, not a tribunal. But the damage was done. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation, and I felt every eye in the room assessing whether I was a spy, a fool, or something worse. When the meal finally ended, Seraphine appeared at my elbow and guided me quickly away from the dispersing guests. We walked in silence through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, until we emerged in a private garden where bioluminescent flowers provided the only light. The moment we were alone, her composure shattered. I'm so sorry. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have told you, should have warned you properly. I hoped it wouldn't be this bad. Seraphine, what's happening? What territorial violation? What casualties? She sank onto a stone bench, her hands trembling. Everything, everything is worse than I let you believe. Seraphine explained it all in the garden's privacy, words tumbling out like a dam breaking. 3 weeks ago, a human merchant vessel had allegedly crossed into restricted Valkoran space. The Valkoran patrol that intercepted them claimed the humans ignored hailing frequencies and attempted to flee. The humans claimed their navigation systems malfunctioned and they complied immediately. Somehow, the confrontation escalated. Shots were fired. 2 Valkoran ships sustained damage. 3 crew members were injured, 1 critically. Both governments were investigating, issuing carefully neutral statements, but nationalist factions on both sides were inflaming the incident. Human media portrayed it as Valkoran aggression against innocent merchants. Valkoran media framed it as human territorial expansion testing boundaries. The truth was probably somewhere in the middle, but truth wasn't what drove political narratives. I invited you before any of this happened, Seraphine said quietly. When relations were strained but stable. By the time the incident occurred, you'd already accepted, preparations were underway, and I thought, stupidly, that maybe your presence could help. That showing my family and the court that humans could be trusted, that friendships were possible, might ease tensions instead of worsening them. But it backfired. Spectacularly, my father is furious. He believes I'm making a political statement at the worst possible time. Taloran thinks you've manipulated me, that I'm too naive to see human ulterior motives. The advisors question my judgment. And there are factions. She stopped, fear evident in her expression. There are nobles who see your presence as an opportunity to make a statement, to demonstrate Valkoran's strength by humiliating or harming a human under our hospitality. The garden suddenly felt much colder. You're saying I'm in actual danger. I'm saying I brought you into a political situation far more volatile than I admitted. That people are watching, waiting to see what happens. That your safety is not guaranteed despite my family's nominal protection. She met my eyes and I saw genuine terror there. You should leave. Tomorrow morning, before the main ceremony when the most hostile nobles arrive. I'll arrange transport, make excuses about academic obligations, ensure your reputation remains intact. What about your reputation? That's already compromised. Protecting you now is the only way to salvage anything. I should have agreed immediately, should have thanked her for the warning and accepted the escape route. But instead, I found myself asking, what were you hoping to accomplish? Originally, I mean. What was the best-case outcome when you invited me? She smiled sadly. That my family would see what I see. That humans aren't the threat they've been taught to fear. That building connections across differences is possible and worthwhile. That friendship can exist outside political convenience. She laughed without humor. Naive, wasn't it? Or brave? I sat beside her on the bench. Seraphine, if I leave now, what message does that send? That humans run when things get difficult. That friendships aren't worth risk. That everyone who thinks cross-species trust is impossible was right all along. It sends the message that you're sensible and value your safety. I'm a cultural anthropologist. Sensibility isn't exactly my defining trait. I took her hand, felt it trembling in mine. You took a risk inviting me, a real one. If anything happens to me here, you're held responsible, right? Your political standing, your family's reputation, everything. Yes. So you've been carrying that fear alone, trying to protect me while navigating your family's anger and court politics, and the possibility that your judgment might get someone hurt. When you phrase it that way, my choices sound remarkably foolish. Or remarkably brave, I repeated. Let me stay. Let me help prove that your initial instinct was right. We argued in that garden until the bioluminescent flowers began to dim with approaching dawn. Seraphine insisted leaving was the only rational choice. I countered that rationality was overrated when principles were at stake. She pointed out that dead martyrs proved nothing. I suggested that living cowards proved even less. Around the 4th hour, we stopped arguing and started planning. The main ceremony was unavoidable, the central event of Harvest Ascension, where the Duke formally acknowledged allies and addressed the assembled nobles. My presence would be noted regardless of whether I attended or fled, so we decided I would attend, visibly, at Seraphine's side. Not hiding or apologizing, but demonstrating exactly what she'd hoped to show. That humans and Valkorans could stand together despite political tension. If someone makes accusations, don't engage defensively, Seraphine coached. Acknowledge their concerns, express genuine regret for casualties, but don't accept responsibility for actions you didn't commit. So diplomatic honesty, so terrifying vulnerability that might get you killed or might earn respect. Honestly, I'm not certain which. That's comforting. The ceremony hall was even more intimidating than I'd imagined. Vast, acoustically perfect, filled with hundreds of nobles whose combined political power could probably reshape territorial boundaries through sheer force of consensus. Guards positioned themselves closer than I suspected was traditional, their eyes tracking me with professional wariness. The ritual began with traditional elements I'd memorized, offerings to seasonal spirits, acknowledgement of harvests and challenges, the Duke's formal recognition of honored guests. When he mentioned my name among visiting dignitaries, the room's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Whispers rippled through the assembly. Then came the gift exchange, where nobles presented symbolic offerings representing their houses and values. I'd prepared something simple, a recording of human harvest songs from various cultures, meant to show parallel traditions across species. But before I could present it, a noble I didn't recognize stood and requested permission to speak. "Your Grace, I must address the presence of the human among us." His voice carried clearly. In this time of tension, when Valkoran blood has been spilled by human aggression, having such a guest suggests either dangerous naivety or deliberate provocation. I questioned the wisdom. I stood before Seraphine could respond. My legs felt unsteady, but I kept my voice level. "May I address the assembly?" The Duke looked surprised but nodded permission. Every eye in the hall locked onto me. I'd never been more terrified in my life. "I'm aware of the recent incident and the Valkoran casualties. I want to state clearly, I grieve those injuries. Most humans would share that grief. Violence serves neither our people's interests nor honors the victims." I paused, choosing words carefully. I'm not a government representative. I can't speak for human policy or defend actions I had no part in. I'm a researcher who was honored by Princess Seraphine's friendship and invitation. I came here hoping to learn, to understand, to build the kind of personal connection that might, in some small way, remind both our peoples that we're more than our government's conflicts. Convenient words, the hostile noble interjected. Easy to speak of friendship while gathering intelligence about our defenses, our politics. If I wanted intelligence, I wouldn't have spent 6 months arguing with Princess Seraphine about proper tea ceremony protocols and whether human humor translates effectively across species. A few scattered laughs. I understand why my presence is concerning, why trust feels dangerous right now, but refusing to build any connection, any understanding, guarantees that the next incident, and there will be a next one, escalates into something worse. Fear is rational. Isolation feels safe, but neither prevents conflict. They just ensure we face it as complete strangers rather than imperfect friends. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Seraphine's mother smiled. Her father's expression shifted, not to warmth, but to something like grudging respect. The hostile noble had no immediate response, his prepared arguments disrupted by honesty he hadn't anticipated. The ceremony continued, and the atmosphere remained tense but no longer hostile. Over the following days I stayed, attended smaller gatherings, spoke with nobles willing to engage, answered questions about human culture, policies, the diversity of opinion within our societies. Seraphine's brother never warmed to me, but he stopped actively glaring. Her father had one genuine conversation with me about agricultural practices that lasted 2 hours. On my last evening, the Duke found me in the garden where Seraphine and I had talked that first night. "You stayed," he said simply, "when leaving would have been wiser and easier." Seraphine took a risk inviting me. Seemed wrong to make her face the consequences alone. My daughter values courage over caution. Sometimes wisely, sometimes not. In this case, he paused. Perhaps wisely. Thank you for not proving her entirely foolish. At the transport platform, Seraphine gripped my hand tightly. "Next time I visit you, on human territory, to demonstrate trust works both directions. Next time, warn me